The comeback begins as President Trump goes on the offensive. That's right. Today launches the official counteroffensive by the amazing Trump legal team, and we're going to dive right into what to expect over the course of the next few days. First, I'd appreciate you smacking that bell and subscribe button, and make sure to head on over to my special website for My Patriot Food Supply. As we saw with the whole pandemic insanity, we cannot wait for an emergency to happen before we respond to one. And no one, absolutely no one, makes preparing for an emergency more ridiculously easy and affordable than our good friends over at My Patriot Supply. Gang, they're simply the best. Their food kits last up to 25 years in storage, and they include breakfast, lunches, and dinners. And best of all, they've got a guarantee policy just for you that's going to absolutely knock your socks off. And if you act now, you can save $100 off a full 4-week emergency food supply when you click on that link below to my special website. You heard that right, 100 smackers off. So do not wait. I've got my food supply. Make sure you get yours. Click on that link below or go to preparewithsteve.com and save $100 off your very own 4-week emergency food supply today. All right, gang. I want to begin here by reminding all of us of something called the Stockdale Principle, okay? This is a principle that business strategists have named after Admiral James Stockdale, who you might remember was Ross Perot's running mate in the 1992 election, which really was in many ways the first shot against the system. Perot was the first major populist presidential candidate. He siphoned off 20% of the vote in 92. Now, you may not know that Admiral Stockdale was the most senior naval officer held captive as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And during all that time, when he and his men were tortured and starved and threatened with death each and every day, Stockdale developed a fundamental principle that his men believed got them successfully through that horror. And what Stockdale argued is that in any challenge in life, we must retain faith that we will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties. But at the same time, we must confront the most brutal facts of our current reality, whatever they may be. So that's why it's often referred to as the Stockdale paradox, right? And in the business world, the Stockdale principle or paradox has been highlighted as a defining characteristic of what differentiates great companies from good or mediocre companies. Great companies confront seemingly hopeless situations with a completely realistic assessment of the dangers they're in and a response thereof, all the while never losing faith that they're going to pull through and prevail in the end. So this is what separates the Stockdale principle from mere wishful thinking or being overly Pollyanna. Here's how Stockdale himself put it. This is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you cannot afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. Now, I start with that because we are seeing today the start of the pro-Trump counteroffensive, which is found both in the courts and in public opinion, that are aimed at turning these media-concocted election results inside out. And so what I want to do here is present to you the very real and sober responses that the Trump team is mustering against the very real threat posed by the Biden and media coup against Trump, but also see how the Trump team really believes that we can do this, that we can prevail given the very real threat we're facing. So first, as promised, the Trump legal team has filed or is in the process of filing lawsuits against Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada to throw out all illegal votes that have been counted in the election results thus far. Now, interestingly enough, it's not just lawsuits here. It's being reported that the FBI has launched 3 formal investigations into voter fraud, 2 in Michigan, 1 in Pennsylvania. And this is coming on the heels of 3 major developments over the last 48 hours. Now, you got to make sure you get this because these are the 3 major developments that you want to keep your eyes fixed on in the days ahead. And it's also why I think the media called the election for Biden on Saturday, because they knew these 3 developments were happening right before their very eyes, and they knew they had to try to circumvent them in a major way, which of course was coronating Biden, the 46th president of the United States. Here are the 3 major developments. First, we now have 60 to 70 eyewitnesses who signed affidavits under penalty of perjury stating that they saw illegal voting activities. That's number 1. Number 2, We now know that a supposed glitch in Dominion voting systems in Michigan caused several thousand votes for Trump to be recast for Joe Biden, and a county that voted red was recast as voting blue. We now know that Dominion voting systems has had several glitches and irregularities, and that it's being used in dozens of counties across the nation, all of which in turn need to be investigated, especially when you're dealing with election results that hang by just a few thousand votes. And the third major development is the Supreme Court actively getting involved in Pennsylvania. So let's look at each of these three developments in turn. Let's start with the affidavits. The Washington Examiner is reporting that an affidavit from Nevada, a whistleblower from Nevada there, alleges that election supervisors in Clark County, okay, that's the most populous county by far in Nevada, counted and included mail-in ballots that had invalid or questionable signatures. In another sworn affidavit, again under the penalty of perjury, another whistleblower at the Clark County Elections Department, Nevada, claims that Nevada poll workers actually fabricated proof of residence data for illegal voters. And the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is claiming openly here that there is more than enough evidence to overturn the Pennsylvania elections. In Philly, we have observers who for 24 hours were kept away from the room where they counted mail-in ballots. During that time, over 135,000 ballots were counted without a single GOP observer as required by law. These ballots reportedly came in late, were brought in bundles. In Pittsburgh, Giuliani notes that they did pretty much the same thing, counting 300,000 ballots without GOP observation, again, as required by law. This is documented by both videotape and eyewitness testimony. Testimony, again, in the form of affidavits under the penalty of perjury. So that's upwards of 450,000 mail-in ballots that were counted illegally without the observation of GOP authorities. And we're seeing similar election fraud lawsuits in Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Madison in particular. All right, so those are all the court cases that are being filed based on the eyewitness affidavits. Let's go to the voting machines. Now, Republicans are beginning to more and more probe Dominion voting systems for its demonstrable irregularities, particularly in Michigan, Nevada, and Arizona. They're demanding hand counting of the ballots in all three states. 47 of Michigan's 83 counties use the Dominion voting system, which means, in effect, that they're all going to have to most likely at least be recounted. And we have to understand that these recanvassing and recount efforts are going to heavily favor Trump. That's why the mainstream Fox News media is doing everything they can to stop it. They don't want an election that hangs in the balance over a few thousand votes to get scrutinized anywhere close like this. So that's what we're seeing going on now with the Dominion systems glitches. And then on top of all this, as we talked about in our live stream over the weekend, we've got the Supreme Court now beginning to close in on Pennsylvania. But first, make sure to download our free gift for you by simply clicking on the link below. It's called our Fake News Antidote. It's a compilation of about 20 sites I go to for my news each and every day. They're all conservative. They all celebrate Trump and nationalist populism. And frankly, look, we need these resources now more than ever. And you can download your own copy of our Fake News Antidote absolutely free at the link down below in the pinned comment section. And you'll have a ready-to-go list of your favorite sites that you'll definitely enjoy and will inspire you throughout this whole process. It's yours absolutely free by clicking on the link below. It is my gift to you. All right, so Justice Sam Alito has given a direct order that all ballots received after 8 p.m. on November 3rd in Pennsylvania must be segregated and separated from all ballots cast prior to 8 p.m. Also, those votes must be counted separately and not included in the total vote. And this is because of what we talked about on Friday, and that's Pennsylvania's law called Act 77. Act 77 permitted all voters to cast their votes by mail, but it absolutely and unequivocally required that all mail-in ballots be received by 8 p.m. on Election Day, when the polls officially close. The problem is that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, by a vote of 4-3, decided that mail-in ballots emphatically do not need to be received by Election Day. Instead, they moved the goalpost, as it were, to the date of being postmarked, as long as a ballot was postmarked on or before Election Day and received within upwards of 3 days thereafter, the vote would be counted. So, the important point here is no matter what your position is on the nature of Act 77, the provisions stated therein, or what the court did in response, regardless of any of that, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court obviously and blatantly rewrote the law. The court intervened in such a way that expressly changed the law from the unambiguous, non-negotiable deadline of 8 p.m. on Election Day to a new standard of postmarking on the election day in general and received within 3 days after the election. And Justice Alito has made it clear, speaking on behalf of the conservatives on the Supreme Court, that this appears to be a blatant violation of the United States Constitution, our federal Constitution, which gives the right to determine the date and time of elections solely to state legislatures, not to courts. It's a classic case of legislating from the bench. And remember, Clarence Thomas's nomination to the Supreme Court was almost railroaded by none other than Joe Biden. So do not think we're not going to see something amazing coming out of the Supreme Court here. So, all right, this is a battle that's going to be going on in the courts for the days ahead. The mainstream media may try to pretend that it's not going on or it's foolhardy, but it most certainly has the potential dramatically altering this election. Now, while all of this is going on, Axios White House reporter Elena Treen revealed that President Trump is indeed planning on holding rallies in the coming weeks in these swing states to galvanize his base. This is precisely what Steve Bannon in his war room said Trump needs to be doing. Get tens of thousands of the 71 million voters to show up at the rallies and pump them up and prepare them for the fight ahead. And one of the things that Trump is planning on doing at these rallies, at least is being reported, is that he's going to brandish the obituaries of all the dead people that voted for Biden, which will be absolutely hilarious. So all of this is to say, remember, the challenge we have before us is incredibly formidable. We have the entire deep state globalist power apparatus fighting against it every single conceivable level, from elected officials, unelected officials, deep state, mainstream media. But Trump is a fighter. He has overcome the odds before, and he can do it again. So let's not forget the Stockdale Principle. Let's support President Trump in his fight in the courts and for popular opinion over the days ahead. Let's be sober and realistic about the challenges before us, but let's never give up on the hope that will always carry us through to the end. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you'll definitely want to check out my latest video that I just uploaded. It was our live stream that we did on Saturday and how the media is actively trying to deflect from the voting glitches and the Supreme Court order against Pennsylvania. I think you're really going to like it. So make sure to click on the link and I will see you over there. God bless.